The moment Trevor Owens stepped into his own pizza restaurant disguised as a new trainee, the stale smell of burnt cheese and grease hit him first. The second thing was the chaos orders piling up, employees rushing around, and a manager barking orders like a drill sergeant. Trevor had built this company from nothing, starting with a single location and expanding to 10 stores over the years. He prided himself on creating a work environment where employees felt valued. But lately, he'd been getting complaints, customers unhappy with service, employees quitting without warning, and profits slipping. He was done relying on second-hand reports. Dressed in a faded hoodie, jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low, he walked up to the counter where a young guy in his early 20s was pressing buttons on the register with an exhausted expression. "You the new trainee?" the guy asked, barely looking up. "Yeah, name's Trevor," he said, using his first name but leaving out the last. "Cool, I'm Jake. Manager's in the back. She'll probably throw you on dishes or something." Trevor nodded and made his way to the back, where he found a woman in her mid-30s, dark hair tied in a messy bun, scowling at a clipboard. "You the new kid?" she asked, eyes scanning him. "Yeah, just started today." She sighed and pointed at the sink. "Dishes, now." Trevor rolled up his sleeves and got to work, scrubbing trays and plates while keeping an eye on everything around him. The place was a mess, trash overflowing, floors sticky with soda spills, and employees moving with a tense energy, like they were afraid of getting yelled at. Half an hour in, he overheard a conversation between two employees near the prep station. "Did you see how Olivia lost it on Liam earlier?" one of them whispered. "Yeah, poor kid. He's only 16. She made him cry last week." Trevor kept scrubbing, but focused on every word. "She's brutal. I swear, if I didn't need this job, I'd be out of here." Trevor clenched his jaw. He needed to see this for himself. A few minutes later, the back door swung open, and Olivia stormed in, dragging a skinny teenage boy by the arm. The kid Liam, Trevor assumed, looked terrified. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Olivia hissed, shoving him into the small storage room. Trevor dropped the pan he was holding and moved closer, staying out of sight but listening. "You messed up 3 orders in a row," Olivia snapped. "Do you have any idea how that makes me look?" "I'm sorry," Liam stammered, voice shaking. "Sorry doesn't cut it. You either keep up or you get out." Trevor had heard enough. His heart pounded as he stepped forward. "Hey," he said, keeping his voice steady. "What's going on here?" Olivia spun around, eyes narrowing. "None of your business, new guy. Go wash some dishes." Trevor didn't budge. He looked at Liam, whose face was red, his hands trembling. "You okay?" Trevor asked. Liam nodded quickly, but his eyes told a different story. Trevor turned back to Olivia. "You always talk to your employees like that." She scoffed. "Listen, I don't have time for this. He's slow, and I don't have room for mistakes." Trevor took a deep breath. He had planned to observe longer, but this needed to be handled now. "You know what?" he said, standing taller. "I think I've seen enough." Olivia crossed her arms. "Oh yeah, and who do you think you are?" Trevor pulled off his cap, letting his full face show. "Trevor Owens, the owner of this company." The color drained from Olivia's face. Liam's eyes widened. The entire kitchen went silent. Trevor let the weight of his words settle before speaking again. "And we need to talk. Now." Trevor watched as Olivia's posture stiffened, her arms locking across her chest like a shield. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. "You're joking," Olivia said after a beat, her voice flat but laced with uncertainty. Trevor didn't blink. "No, I'm not." Liam shifted awkwardly, his gaze darting between them. Other employees had stopped what they were doing, their eyes wide and locked on the unfolding confrontation. Olivia's jaw tightened. If this is some kind of test, I don't appreciate it. Trevor's tone didn't waver. It's not a test. I've spent the last few hours watching how this place runs, and what I just saw was unacceptable. Olivia exhaled sharply through her nose. I was handling a performance issue. He's been making mistakes all night. Trevor turned to Liam. That true? Liam swallowed hard. I did mess up some orders. Trevor nodded, then faced Olivia again. And you think screaming at him in a storage room is the way to fix that? Her lips pressed into a thin line. I don't have time to coddle people. If they can't handle the pressure, they don't belong here. Trevor's expression darkened. What you just did wasn't leadership, it was intimidation. She scoffed. This is a fast-paced business. If people can't keep up, we all suffer. Trevor stepped forward. You've been running this place like a dictatorship, and I guarantee that's part of the reason why turnover is so high. You think I don't see the resignation letters piling up, the complaints from customers, the decline in sales? That doesn't happen by accident. Olivia's face flushed. Keep things running. If I didn't push them, this place would fall apart. Trevor's gaze never wavered. Or maybe it's already falling apart because of how you run it. A long silence stretched between them. Olivia opened her mouth, then shut it again, her fingers gripping the edges of her clipboard. Trevor turned to Liam. You can go back to work if you're up for it. If not, take a break. Liam hesitated before nodding quickly and stepping out of the storage room. Trevor looked back at Olivia. We're talking, now, office. She hesitated for half a second before spinning on her heel and stalking toward the back office. Trevor followed, shutting the door behind them. The office was small and cluttered, papers stacked haphazardly on the desk. Olivia leaned against the filing cabinet, arms still crossed, her expression locked in something between frustration and defensiveness. Trevor didn't sit. How long have you been managing this location? 3 years. And you think this is the best way to run it? She exhaled sharply. I don't have time to hold everyone's hand. If I don't keep them in line, we fall behind. Then customers complain, and I'm the one left cleaning up the mess. Trevor's stare was unrelenting. So your solution is fear? It's efficiency. Employees quitting constantly, customers leaving bad reviews, and a staff that looks afraid to breathe wrong doesn't scream efficient to me. Her fingers tapped against her arm. You don't see what I see every day. Trevor leaned forward slightly. That's why I came here, to see it firsthand. And what I saw was a manager pushing people to their breaking point instead of helping them improve. Olivia let out a bitter laugh. You think I haven't tried? You think I don't want things to run smoothly? Half these kids don't care about the job. They show up late, they make mistakes, they don't take it seriously. If I don't push them, they walk all over me. Trevor's voice dropped slightly. Ever wonder why they don't care, why they don't take it seriously? She didn't answer. Trevor continued. People don't give their best work when they're afraid. They give their best when they feel valued. Her jaw clenched. I don't have time to be their friend. Trevor shook his head. This isn't about being their friend. It's about being a leader. There's a difference. Olivia's posture remained rigid, but she didn't fire back as quickly this time. Trevor pressed on. Tell me something. When was the last time you asked an employee how they were doing, not their work, just them? She hesitated. Trevor nodded. That's what I thought. She shifted her weight. I don't have time for that. You don't have time to build a team that actually wants to work for you. Olivia looked away for the first time. Trevor folded his arms. Get it, you're under pressure. You probably feel like this whole place is on your shoulders, but the way you're handling it is making everything worse. You're driving good people out. Her throat worked as she swallowed. I don't mean to. Trevor's voice softened slightly. Then it's time to change how you lead. She let out a slow breath, her shoulders losing some of their tension. Trevor didn't ease up. I'm not saying this to tear you down. I'm saying it because this store is struggling and you're a big part of why. Olivia's fingers curled against her sleeves. What do you want me to do? Trevor didn't hesitate. Start by treating your employees like people, not problems. Train them instead of berating them. If someone's struggling, figure out why instead of assuming they're just incompetent. She sat down heavily in the chair beside the desk, staring at her hands. Trevor leaned against the desk. You're not beyond redemption here, but if you don't change, I will replace you. Her eyes snapped up. That's not a threat, Trevor clarified. It's reality. This store needs a leader, not a tyrant. A long silence stretched between them. Olivia finally exhaled, rubbing a hand over her forehead. I don't want to lose this job. Trevor nodded, then prove you can do it differently. She gave the smallest nod, though her expression was still tight. Trevor pushed off the desk. This conversation isn't over, but for now, we both have work to do. He turned and left the office, feeling the weight of the moment settle deep in his chest. This wasn't just about Olivia. This was about rebuilding a culture that had clearly been broken for a long time. And he wasn't about to walk away until it was fixed. Trevor left the office with his mind buzzing, stepping back into the kitchen where employees had resumed their work, though the tension still clung to the air. Eyes flickered toward him, some filled with curiosity, others with uncertainty. He wasn't just a stranger anymore. He was the owner, and that changed everything. Liam stood near the prep station, arms tight at his sides, his face still pale. Trevor walked over, lowering his voice so only the teen could hear. You good? Liam hesitated before nodding. Yes. Trevor wasn't convinced. If you need a break, take it. No one should be treated like that. Liam shifted his weight. I don't want to get in trouble. Trevor's jaw tightened. You won't. The kid gave a slow nod but still looked wary. Trevor could tell this wasn't the first time he'd been spoken to like that. It probably wasn't the first time anyone here had been. A sharp voice cut through the air from the front counter. Table 5 is still waiting on their order. Trevor turned, watching as a short, stocky man in his 30s slammed a receipt onto the counter. His uniform shirt was wrinkled, his expression sour. Kitchen's backed up, one of the cooks replied, barely looking up as he slid a pizza into the oven. I don't care, the man snapped. They're complaining, and I'm not dealing with another bad review because you people can't keep up. Trevor's attention sharpened. He had assumed Olivia was the main problem, but now he was seeing something else. This wasn't just about one bad manager. It was the whole culture. He stepped forward. What's your name? The man turned, eyes narrowing. Who's asking? Trevor Owens. The man's expression flickered with something unreadable before settling back into irritation. Trevor Owens, like the owner. Exactly like that. The man straightened slightly. I didn't know you were coming. That was the point. The shift in the room was immediate. Employees exchanged glances, some looking satisfied, others nervous. The man in front of him swallowed, then forced a stiff smile. Well, welcome. We've had a busy night, but we're managing. Trevor didn't buy the act. What's your position here? Assistant manager. Name's Greg. Trevor nodded, glancing toward the still waiting ticket on the counter. You always talk to employees like that. Greg's smile faltered. I just expect them to do their jobs. And you think yelling at them helps with that? Greg's eyes hardened. Sometimes people need to be pushed. Trevor lifted an eyebrow. Or maybe they need leadership instead of pressure. Greg opened his mouth, then shut it, glancing toward Olivia's office door as if expecting backup. When none came, he squared his shoulders. I keep things moving. Trevor studied him for a moment. And how's that working out? Greg didn't answer. Trevor looked around the room at the employees who had gone back to work but were still clearly on edge. He thought about the complaints, the resignations, the feeling he had the second he walked in. This wasn't just a bad night. This was how things always were. He turned back to Greg. Clear something up for me. Who trained you for this role? Greg hesitated. Olivia. Trevor exhaled slowly through his nose. That explained a lot. He looked at the employees. Some were clearly listening, others pretending not to but still stealing glances. Trevor wasn't about to let this continue. Everyone, stop what you're doing for a second. At first, there was hesitation, but soon, hands stilled. Conversations died down, and all eyes turned to him. I've been here for a few hours now, Trevor began, and I've seen enough to know this place isn't running the way it should be. A silence stretched out, heavy and expectant. Let's be clear. No one should be afraid to come to work. No one should be yelled at in a storage room. No one should feel like they're disposable. Some employees shifted, avoiding eye contact. Others stood straighter, as if relieved someone was finally saying it. I built this company from the ground up, Trevor continued, and I didn't do it by treating people like machines. I did it by giving people the tools to succeed. Somewhere along the way, that got lost here. Olivia had stepped out of the office now, arms crossed, but she wasn't interrupting. Greg looked defensive, but he wasn't speaking either. Trevor's gaze swept the room. That changes today. A murmur passed through the employees. Liam, Trevor said, turning toward the teen, how long have you worked here? Liam hesitated. 3 months. Trevor nodded. Anyone ever properly train you? Liam hesitated again, then shook his head. Trevor let that sink in. That's the problem. People are set up to fail, then punished when they struggle. That ends now. He turned toward Olivia and Greg. You two have been running this place through fear. That stops today. Either you learn to lead the right way, or you won't be leading at all. Olivia's face was unreadable. Greg's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Trevor looked back at the staff. Anyone who's been mistreated here, I see you, and I'm fixing this, but I need to know who actually wants to be a part of that change. A slow ripple of nods spread through the group. Trevor exhaled. Good, because this place is about to run very differently. Trevor stepped forward, letting the weight of his words settle over the staff. Their faces reflected a mix of emotions, some uncertain, others hopeful. Change wasn't going to happen overnight, but he wasn't leaving until he set the foundation for something better. He turned to Olivia, her arms still folded tightly, her expression guarded. Greg stood beside her, his posture stiff, his jaw locked. The power dynamic between them had shifted in the last few minutes, and they both knew it. Trevor kept his voice steady. Here's what's going to happen. We're making immediate changes, and it starts with leadership. Olivia, I need to know if you're willing to learn how to manage differently. If not, I'll find someone who will. Olivia hesitated, her fingers pressing into her arms. For the first time since he revealed himself, she didn't fire back. I don't want to lose this job, she finally admitted, her voice quieter than before. Then you need to prove you can do it the right way, Trevor said. This isn't about control. It's about building a team that actually wants to work with you, not against you. She gave a slow nod, but her eyes flickered toward Greg. Trevor followed her gaze. Greg, you've been part of this problem too. I need to know if you're willing to change. Greg exhaled sharply. I've been doing what I thought was necessary to keep things running. Trevor shook his head. What you thought was necessary and what actually worked are two different things. Are you ready to do this differently? Greg's lips pressed together before he gave a clipped nod. Trevor wasn't convinced yet, but it was a start. He turned back to the employees. I'm making it clear right now no one here should be afraid of their manager. You all deserve proper training, respect, and a workplace where you're not walking on eggshells. A few employees exchanged glances, as if waiting to see if this was actually real. Trevor gestured to the kitchen. First change, we're setting up proper training. No more throwing new hires into the deep end and expecting them to figure it out. Olivia, you and Greg will work with each employee individually to make sure they actually know what they're doing before they're held accountable for mistakes. Olivia gave a small nod. Greg shifted uncomfortably but didn't argue. Trevor continued. Second, anyone who mistreats an employee, whether it's management or a coworker, is done. That includes yelling, belittling, or anything that makes this place feel toxic. If you can't correct someone without tearing them down, you have no business leading. A few employees straightened at that, as if they'd been waiting for someone to say it for a long time. Trevor's focus moved to Liam, who had stayed near the prep station, still looking wary but less tense than before. You were thrown into this job without the right support, and that's on leadership, not you. If you want to stay, I'll make sure you get the training you should have had from the start. Liam hesitated, then gave a small nod. Trevor looked around the room again. You all deserve to work in a place where you feel respected. That starts now. If anyone has issues or concerns, I want to hear them. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then, a woman near the ovens cleared her throat. The schedule's a mess, she said. People get shifts they didn't sign up for, and if we complain, we're told to deal with it or find another job. Trevor nodded. That stops today. Scheduling will be adjusted based on availability, and if someone can't work a shift, we'll find a fair solution instead of forcing them into it. Another employee, a man near the dish station, spoke up. The kitchen's understaffed. We're constantly behind because there aren't enough of us to handle the rushes. Trevor turned to Olivia and Greg. Why is that? Olivia hesitated. People quit too fast for us to keep up with hiring. Trevor let the answer hang in the air. They all knew why turnover was so high. We'll be hiring more staff immediately, he said, and making sure they actually want to stay. One by one, employees voiced their frustrations: broken equipment that never got fixed, unfair treatment, lack of communication. Trevor listened, addressing each concern with clear solutions. By the time the conversation wrapped up, the tense energy in the room had shifted. There was still uncertainty, but there was also something else: relief. Trevor turned back to Olivia and Greg. You both have a choice. Either be part of the solution or step aside. Olivia met his gaze, something unreadable in her expression. I'll do better. Greg took a beat longer before nodding. Me too. Trevor wasn't the type to take words at face value. He'd be back to make sure they followed through. But for the first time, he saw the possibility of real change. As he stepped back, the employees slowly returned to their tasks, but there was a different energy in the air. A shift in the way they moved, the way they looked at each other. It wasn't fixed overnight, but it was a start, and that was enough for now. Trevor stayed at the restaurant for the rest of the shift, watching how things unfolded now that he had laid down new expectations. The tension hadn't fully lifted, but there was a noticeable shift. Employees weren't as stiff, their movements less frantic. Olivia and Greg, for the first time, seemed to be making an effort to communicate rather than command. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. By the time the last order went out, Trevor knew he had more work to do before he could step away. The problems at this location ran deep, and one speech wasn't enough to undo years of mismanagement. He needed to see if Olivia and Greg were truly capable of change, or if their promises were just for show. As the kitchen wound down, Trevor gestured for Olivia and Greg to follow him to the office. They exchanged a look before heading inside. Trevor shut the door behind them, keeping his stance firm. "I've seen what I needed to see tonight," he said. "Now I need to hear from you. What's your plan to fix this?" Olivia leaned against the desk, her fingers tracing the edge of a clipboard. She took a moment before responding. "I'm going to work on how to talk to the staff. I know I've been too harsh. If they don't feel like they can come to me, then I'm not doing my job right." Trevor gave a small nod, then turned to Greg. Greg exhaled through his nose. "I need to stop treating everything like a crisis. Push too hard because I don't want the place to fall apart, but get that it's making things worse." Trevor studied them both. Acknowledging the problem is one thing, fixing it is another. How do you plan to change your approach? Olivia straightened slightly. "I want to set up meetings with the staff, one-on-one. I need to hear from them directly, not just assume I know what's going on." Greg shifted his weight. "I need to step back and actually trust them to do their jobs instead of jumping down their throats every time something goes wrong." Trevor let the silence hang for a moment. "You're both on probation. You've got 2 weeks to show me real progress. If I come back and things are the same, I'll be making changes, permanent ones." Neither of them argued. Olivia nodded, and Greg gave a tight but understanding response. Trevor stepped away from the desk. "One more thing. This isn't just about making things easier for the employees. It's about making this a better place to work so people actually want to stay. You fix the culture, and you fix the turnover. You fix the turnover, and this place stops running on chaos." Olivia rubbed the back of her neck. "I get it, I do." Greg gave a slow nod. "Yes, we've got work to do." Trevor opened the office door and stepped out, leaving them to process what had just happened. He wasn't expecting miracles overnight, but he needed to see real effort. As he walked through the kitchen, he spotted Liam cleaning up near the prep station. The kid had worked the rest of his shift without issue, but Trevor could see the exhaustion in his movements. Trevor stopped nearby. "You doing all right?" Liam looked up, hesitating before giving a small nod. "Yes, it was better after, you know." Trevor didn't push. "I meant what I said earlier. If you ever feel like you're being treated unfairly, you come to me. No one should leave work feeling like they've been beaten down." Liam gave a small, relieved nod. "Thanks." Trevor clapped him lightly on the shoulder before heading for the exit. He had seen everything he needed to for now, but he wasn't done with this place. Not by a long shot.